3 years ago, climbing stairs was a punishment. Literally. Every step was a reminder of what my body could no longer do. My knees creaked, my muscles tightened, and I felt as if someone were pushing me down with every attempt to go up. It wasn't just the stairs at home, it was the ones at the doctor's office, at the supermarket, even the steps onto the bus. There were days when, honestly, I avoided leaving the house just so I wouldn't have to face them. I remember one afternoon in particular. I was alone. I was going up carefully, clinging to the handrail with both hands. Halfway up, a step betrayed me. I felt a pull in my left leg, and for a second, I thought I wasn't going to make it. I stopped. I breathed. I looked up, and I cried. Not from pain, but from frustration. In that moment, I understood I couldn't go on like that. Something had to change. Today, at 80, I tell you this hand on heart. I climb stairs again without pain, with a steady step, without a cane, without fear. And it wasn't thanks to surgery or expensive treatments. It was thanks to 4 vitamins, 4 nutrients I had been ignoring for years, 4 key pieces my body had been crying out for, and that, once I added them, transformed everything. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what they are, what they do, how I discovered them, how I started taking them, and above all, how they changed my life. Because it wasn't magic. It was a decision, consistency, and knowledge. If you've also felt your body doesn't respond the way it used to, stay with me. Maybe what you need isn't another pill, but what gave me back the strength, balance, and confidence to move again. And before we start, tell me something. How old are you? And from which country or city are you watching me? I'd love to know where we're walking together from today. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day when you don't expect anything to change. I had woken up early, as always, and went downstairs to the kitchen to make myself a coffee. The air was cool, and for some reason, I felt a little pull in my lower back. Nothing serious, I thought. Things of age, I told myself. I took the cup, went back up the stairs to look for a magazine I'd left in the bedroom. And that's when it happened. It was all a matter of one bad step, of a foot that didn't lift high enough. I felt my balance go, as if my body no longer knew how to stay upright. I let go of the cup, tried to grab the banister, but it was too late. I fell sideways, hitting my shoulder and hip against the edge of the step. The sound of the breaking ceramic is still etched in my mind. I stayed there, half sitting, half lying, with a mix of pain, surprise, and embarrassment. The worst part wasn't the blow. It was the feeling that I'd lost something more important. Security. That trust you've always had in your body vanished in a second. I stayed still for a few minutes, breathing hard, looking at the stairs as if they were an enemy. My leg hurt, my shoulder hurt, and my pride hurt. That day I couldn't go up, nor down properly. That day I stayed on the ground floor, moving slowly, clumsily, feeling that something had changed forever. When my daughter arrived in the afternoon and saw the bruise on my arm, she didn't say much. She just looked at me with a mix of fear and resignation. "Dad, you can't go on like this," she said. The next day she brought a cane, and the day after that, she sent me a catalogue of stair lifts. I nodded, but inside I resisted. Not because I didn't understand her concern, but because if I accepted the cane, it was like signing a declaration. I can't anymore. It was admitting that my body no longer responded, that the staircase I had gone up and down thousands of times now defeated me. But fear settled in. Every time I put a foot on the first step, I felt a knot in my stomach. I watched my feet, the steps, the walls, as if anything could make me fall again. I started to avoid them, to ask for help, to limit my movements. I lost the freedom to move around my own home, something as basic as that. And with that loss, a part of my independence, my security, my dignity also faded. The hardest part was admitting it wasn't just a one-off accident. It was a warning, a silent scream from my body that had been building up small signals for years that I didn't want to hear. That stiffness when getting up, that little knee pain I ignored, That fatigue I chalked up only to age. That fall was the last straw. Not just because of the pain, but because of what it showed me. Because that day, I understood I couldn't keep ignoring what my body was shouting. After that fall, I decided I could no longer keep guessing what was wrong with me. My daughter insisted I go to the doctor, and although at first I resisted, as many of us do, I ended up going. I was seen by a geriatrician, a patient man with a calm voice and a steady gaze. He listened carefully and ordered several tests, but before sending me home, he said something that kept me thinking for days. "Mr. Manuel," he said, "not everything you're feeling is simply because of age. Your body isn't just getting older. It's also missing fuel." Fuel, that's how he put it, as if I were an old car that didn't need an expensive repair, but to fill the tank. I smiled politely, but the phrase stuck. 1 week later, I went back with the results in hand. The doctor reviewed them calmly. His words were clear. I had significant deficiencies in several vitamins and minerals. And then he explained something that, honestly, no one had ever told me. From 60 years on, the body naturally begins to lose muscle mass. It's called sarcopenia. It's not a disease, it's part of aging. But if you add poor diet, little sun, a sedentary lifestyle and stress, the process speeds up. Muscle wears down, joints suffer, and every movement begins to hurt. He told me that muscles, in addition to exercise, need micronutrients. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids. Without them, muscles don't regenerate, don't have energy, don't maintain their structure. It's like wanting a plant to grow without fertile soil or water. One of his phrases marked me. This isn't just old age. It's a lack of gasoline for your muscles. In that moment, I understood something very important. I wasn't condemned to deteriorate just because I was 80. What I had was a poorly nourished body. A body that, without realizing it, had been running on minimum for years. He told me about vitamin D, which helps fix calcium and keep bones strong. About B12, which feeds the nerves and fights muscle fatigue. About E, which protects cells from wear. And about magnesium, that forgotten mineral that acts in more than 300 processes in the body, including movement and muscle relaxation. He also told me about recent studies. One published by the National Institute on Aging in the United States, where it was shown that older adults with vitamin D deficiency had twice the risk of falls and fractures. Another study, from Tufts University in Boston, revealed how sarcopenia was significantly reduced by adding B12 supplements and resistance exercises. And that's when it clicked. I had been treating the symptoms, the pain, the stiffness, the fatigue, as if they were inevitable, when many were actually the result of an undersupplied body. I didn't need more pain pills. I needed the nutrients my body was no longer absorbing well on its own. It was like trying to make a lamp work without electricity. No matter how much you tap it or move it, without energy, there's no light. From that day on, my view of health changed completely. I no longer thought about aging with resignation. I thought about rebuilding, nourishing, strengthening what I still had. Because if anything became clear, it's this. Age may mark the passage of time, but it doesn't have to dictate the state of your body. Vitamin 1, the one that strengthened my joints. Vitamin D. The first vitamin the doctor mentioned was vitamin D. He told me it was one of the most important, especially in older people. I was surprised. I had always heard about vitamin C, about B12, about iron. But D, until that moment, I hadn't paid much attention to. It's the one that supports your foundations, the doctor explained. Without enough vitamin D, your bones don't absorb calcium, your muscles lose strength, and your balance becomes unstable. He wasn't saying it to scare me. He said it because it was reality, and I proved it the moment he handed me the blood test results. My vitamin D levels were on the floor, far below normal, and that even though, apparently, I didn't have a bad diet, I ate a bit of everything. But with the years, the body stops processing and absorbing the same way. Besides, I spent most of my time indoors, and that was another important detail. It turns out the body produces vitamin D through sun exposure. It's enough to let the light touch the skin for a few minutes a day to activate that production. But if you don't go out, if you're always covered, or if you constantly use sunscreen, that production drops. And then I understood why, for some time, I felt as if I were walking on unstable ground, as if my legs were no longer entirely mine. My bones were more fragile, my joints more sensitive, and my balance compromised. All without my realizing it. I started a simple plan. The doctor prescribed a daily vitamin D supplement. He also recommended going out in the sun at least 15 minutes in the morning or late afternoon. Nothing extreme, just letting my arms and face get that direct light. He also suggested including foods rich in vitamin D, fish like salmon or sardines, eggs, and fortified products like some cereals or plant-based milks. The first few days I didn't notice big changes, but after a few weeks, I began to feel something different. It wasn't that the pain disappeared overnight. It was that my body seemed more stable. My steps were steadier. My knees didn't buckle the way they used to. And little by little, that feeling of insecurity began to give way. By 2 months, I was surprised to be going down the stairs without needing to cling to the handrail with both hands. By 3, I realized I could walk long stretches without the feeling that my legs were going to give out. It was as if, suddenly, my body had a more solid base. I felt I had foundations again, that there was strength underneath, that I wasn't going to fall at the first misstep. And I'm not saying vitamin D was a magic solution. It wasn't that. It was an essential piece my body had been silently asking for years. A piece that, once restored, allowed everything else to start working better. Since then, going out in the sun is no longer just a stroll. It's an act of health. Taking my supplement is no longer an obligation. It's a commitment to myself. Because if I learned anything, it's that when you strengthen bones and joints, you don't just regain mobility, you also regain confidence. Vitamin 2, the one that took away the chronic muscle pain. Vitamin B12. For a long time, I believed constant tiredness was normal at my age. I woke up in the mornings with heavy muscles, as if I'd spent the whole night hauling sacks instead of sleeping. I had cramps at the slightest effort. Climbing a short slope or walking a few blocks was already a reason to stop and rest. But the worst thing wasn't the pain. It was the feeling of weakness. It wasn't just that my legs or back hurt. It was as if I lacked fuel, even to do the simplest things. One day, while trying to open a bottle of water, I noticed my arms were shaking. Not from old age, but from exhaustion. An exhaustion that wasn't physical nor mental. It was something deeper, more invisible. That's when the doctor decided to order a more complete analysis. And there the answer appeared. I had a strong vitamin B12 deficiency. He explained that this vitamin is key for many functions in the body, but especially for nerves and muscles. Without enough B12, the nervous system begins to falter. Signals slow down, coordination is affected, muscles don't respond well. That's why I felt that constant fatigue, that sense of being on pause, of not having any response. The interesting thing is that vitamin B12 isn't produced by the body. You only get it through food, especially animal-based foods, meat, fish, eggs, dairy. And over time, many older adults stop absorbing it properly, even if they consume it. The stomach loses the ability to extract it, and little by little, reserves run out. The doctor recommended starting with sublingual supplements, which absorb better, and reinforcing my diet with foods rich in B12. I began including more sardines, beef liver once a week, and eggs almost every day. I also tried natural yogurt and a bit of cheese, which I had avoided before for fear of cholesterol. At first I didn't notice anything, but after 2 weeks, I began to feel different. I woke up with more mental clarity. My body still had aches, yes, but the deep exhaustion was gone. I started taking my daily walks without having to stop every 2 blocks. Even my hands stopped shaking when I wrote or held a cup. But the most impressive thing was one ordinary morning. I woke up and felt I could breathe deeply, move freely, stretch without pain. And above all, I wanted to start the day. It wasn't just that I had regained strength, it was something more. I had energy again, not just strength. I felt awake. That was the most noticeable change. My mind became clearer. Conversations were no longer hard for me. My body, though still that of an 80-year-old man, felt lighter, more available, more mine. And it made me think how many people must be feeling that same exhaustion without knowing why. How many older adults are being treated for pain, anxiety, or weakness, when what they need is to check their B12 levels. I didn't get better overnight, but by adding that vitamin, I began to see real improvements. And above all, I regained something many of us consider lost with age: the desire to move, to do things, to live with less weight in the body and in the mind. Vitamin 3, the one that brought flexibility back. Vitamin E. For years, I thought body stiffness was simply part of aging, something inevitable. I struggled to button my shirt, scratch my back, reach a book on a shelf. I remember one morning trying to put on a jacket, and I couldn't get my left arm through the sleeve, not because of sharp pain, but because of a total lack of mobility. The shoulder wouldn't go past a certain point, as if it had rusted inside. I got frustrated. I felt clumsy, old, dependent. That's when, in one of the appointments, the doctor asked me something very simple. Do you have flexibility problems? Is it hard to twist your torso, stretch your arms, bend over? I nodded, and he, with the calm of someone who knows more than he says, told me about a vitamin almost nobody talks about: vitamin E. He explained that this vitamin plays a key role as an antioxidant. It protects cells from wear, reduces muscle inflammation, and helps with recovery after exertion. But most important for me at that moment, it helps keep muscles and tissues elastic. When you lack vitamin E, he said, muscles harden, tissues lose lubrication, and even the simplest movement starts to hurt. I did more tests, and as expected, my levels were below the recommended range. The doctor suggested starting with a gentle supplement, but also changing my diet. He gave me a simple list of foods rich in vitamin E: almonds, walnuts, sunflower seeds, olive oil, avocado, and spinach. Nothing exotic, nothing expensive, just things I had stopped eating or never included consistently. I started with a handful of nuts every morning, olive oil on my salad, avocado about 3 times a week, and a low-dose natural supplement to go along with the habit change. During the first weeks, I didn't notice big differences, but one day, without thinking, I raised my arm to take a towel from the top bathroom shelf, and I did it without pain, without stiffness, as if my body had remembered how to move. It was a small, almost invisible moment, but for me it was huge. I stood there, arm raised, smiling at the mirror. I had range of motion again. I was stretching, without fear. Little by little, the stiffness that had been with me for years began to give way. I no longer had to turn my whole body to look back. It no longer hurt to bend down to tie my shoes. Even when walking, I felt more ease in my hips and ankles, as if my body had taken off an invisible corset. But it wasn't only my body that changed. Something in me changed too. I felt my muscles stopped being rigid, and so did I. It's hard to explain in words, but there's a connection between a tense body and a closed mind. When you can't move, everything seems harder, more limited, farther away. But when you regain mobility, you also regain freedom, and with it, the desire to do, to go out, to live. Since then, I don't let a single day pass without being grateful for that forgotten vitamin, because it taught me there's no age limit to move lightly again, and that flexibility isn't only physical, it's also a way of living. Vitamin 4, the one that supported everything, magnesium. Even though we call it vitamin 4, it isn't one. Magnesium is a mineral, but not just any mineral. It's one of those quiet elements that, although almost nobody mentions it, is behind practically everything the body needs to function well. And it was, honestly, the one I underestimated the most. For many years, my nights were long and painful. I went to bed hoping to rest, but discomfort woke me several times. I felt pins and needles in my calves, cramps in my feet, spasms in my thighs. Sometimes my arms even jerked while I slept. I thought it was poor circulation, or simply old people's stuff. One night in particular, I woke up with such a strong pull in my right leg that it made me shout. The pain was intense, as if someone were twisting a cable from the inside. I had to get up, walk around the house with clumsy steps, and wet my legs with warm water. It took me almost an hour to get back to bed. But the worst part wasn't the broken sleep. It was how I felt when I woke up the next day. Stiff, irritable, as if I hadn't slept at all. It was my daughter who told me about magnesium. She had read an article about older adults and muscular insomnia and mentioned it over breakfast. "Dad, have they ever checked your magnesium?" They hadn't. And when I asked my doctor, he explained this mineral is essential for more than 300 functions in the body. It regulates nerve impulses, helps relax muscles after effort, takes part in bone formation, and, what interested me most, improves sleep quality. It turned out that over the years, many adults lose magnesium without realizing it. Reserves drain slowly, and the body begins to send signals: constant fatigue, cramps, trouble sleeping, stiffness on waking. I started taking it that same week. The doctor recommended a type of magnesium that's easier for older people to absorb, magnesium glycinate. He explained it's gentle on the stomach, doesn't cause diarrhea like some other types, and has a more relaxing effect. He also mentioned magnesium citrate, a good option if you have digestion or constipation issues. I chose glycinate at a low dose at first, at night. And little by little, I began to notice changes. First the nights, calmer, with fewer awakenings. Then the cramps, less frequent, less intense. And finally, waking up. It was no longer a painful process. I got up and felt my legs weren't at war with me. It was a curious thing. By sleeping better, I walked better. I slept better, and on waking, I walked better. My steps were steadier, my muscles less tense. Even my hands, which used to wake up numb, moved freely from early on. The difference was real, and it made me understand that rest isn't only for the mind, it's for the muscles too. If they don't relax well, if they don't regenerate while you sleep, the body pays for it during the day. Since then, magnesium has been part of my nightly routine, a small gesture before bed, and a huge gift when I wake up. If you're sleeping badly, if your legs feel heavy in the morning, if cramps are part of your nights, do what I did. Ask yourself whether your body might be missing something as simple as this. I spent almost a year in an assisted living home. It wasn't a bad place. The staff was kind, the food was decent, and the atmosphere calm. But over time, I began to notice something that now seems obvious, but that back then felt normal. Nobody talked about prevention. Nobody talked about nutrition, and even less about vitamins. When I said my legs hurt, they gave me acetaminophen. When I complained about cramps, they offered a muscle relaxant. If I couldn't sleep, a mild sedative. And if I was anxious, a pill to calm me down. And it's not that they meant any harm. It's the system, a system that treats symptoms, but doesn't stop to look for the root. They gave me pain pills, but nobody told me about these vitamins. Not once did anyone suggest checking my vitamin D levels or doing a test to see if I had a magnesium deficiency. No one asked whether my diet included sources of B12 or whether I was absorbing what I ate. Vitamin E wasn't mentioned, nor the role it plays in muscle flexibility. Everything was superficial. Quick responses, patch on patch. And that's when I got it. If I didn't start taking charge of my body, no one was going to do it for me. Sometimes we expect too much from doctors. We expect them to have all the answers, to get ahead of our symptoms, to rescue us from our neglect. But the reality is that medicine, as it is, often reacts. It doesn't prevent. It waits for something to fail before acting. And at a certain age, that's already too late. Today I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. You can do a lot for your body without waiting for it to be prescribed. You can observe, learn, ask, insist. You can eat better, move more, breathe differently. You can get tests, read labels, get some sun. You can make small decisions that, over time, change the course of your health. If you're listening to this message today and feel your body is sending signals, don't ignore them. Don't think it's just age. Ask yourself, when was the last time you checked your vitamin D, B12, or magnesium levels? Are you including real, living, nutrient-rich foods in your daily life? Do you get sun regularly? Do you go out for a walk even 10 minutes a day? Have you asked your doctor whether it's possible to complement your diet beyond pills? If you haven't, do it now. Make a list. Take it to your next appointment. And if the doctor doesn't give it importance, seek a second opinion. Because this is your health, your body, your life. And you don't need drastic changes. You can start little by little. A handful of nuts a day, a short walk in the morning sun, a glass of water with magnesium before bed, a sublingual dose of vitamin B12, a salad with spinach and olive oil. Small acts, big results. I did it at 80. You can do it today. Because old age isn't synonymous with decline. Well cared for, old age is a second chance to live with awareness. The day I climbed stairs again without holding the handrail. It was an ordinary afternoon. It wasn't a special occasion. There were no guests at home, no doctors present, no cameras recording the moment. I had gone out for a short walk, as had become my habit. The sun was gentle, the air mild, and my body felt light. When I came back, I found myself in front of the same stairs as always. 10 steps, the same ones that for years were my little personal mountain. The same stairs I avoided so many times, or climbed like a fearful old man, with both hands gripping the handrail, teeth clenched and forehead sweaty from the tension. But that afternoon, something was different. I didn't overthink it. I just stopped for a second at the foot of the first step and felt a confidence I hadn't felt in a long time, a firmness in my legs, a stability in my back, a quiet, calm balance that nudged me to trust. And then I went up. One step, then another, and another, without stopping, without hesitating, and for the first time in years, without holding the handrail. It was a brief instant, but an eternal one. Each step was a declaration of independence. With every tread, I told myself, "You're coming back." Not just physically. I was coming back emotionally. Coming back to believe in myself. Coming back to trust that I could still stand on my own. At the top, I stopped. Not from fatigue, but from emotion. I looked down and realized what I had just done. It wasn't just climbing a staircase. It was beating fear. The fear of falling, of failing, of depending. It was, too, reclaiming a right, the right to move around my house, through my life, freely. In that moment, my granddaughter appeared, just coming from the kitchen. She looked at me, surprised, eyes wide. "Grandpa, did you go up without holding on?" I just smiled. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She ran to hug me, and in that hug, I understood it wasn't only me who had won something that day. My family had too, because when you regain confidence in yourself, those around you also breathe easier. That night, I wrote it in my notebook. Today, I climbed 10 steps, but in reality, I climbed 1,000. 1,000 days of pain, fear, resignation, and I left them behind, one by one. Since that day, every time I approach those stairs, I smile. Not because they never hurt, sometimes they hurt a little, but because I know they no longer defeat me. Because every step I take with dignity, with gratitude, with the awareness that the body, though it ages, can renew itself, and that you're never too old to surprise yourself. Sometimes it's not about running a marathon, or lifting weights, or dancing like before. Sometimes the greatest achievement lies in the simple things: climbing without fear, walking without pain, living without depending. And if that little miracle was possible for me at 80, who's to say it isn't possible for you too? It didn't give me back my youth, but it did give me back something I thought I'd lost: dignity. That dignity you feel when you can fend for yourself, when your body accompanies you, even with limits. When you can dress without help, walk without fear, climb stairs without stopping every 2 steps. Because it's not about being young again, it's about trusting your body again. Today I want to tell you, looking you in the eyes through this screen, that if I could, you can too. It wasn't easy, it wasn't fast, it wasn't magic. It was slow, it was gradual, but it was real. And it began with something as simple as checking my levels and giving my body what it needed. That's why I want to remind you which 4 vitamins and minerals changed my life. Vitamin D, the foundation of my bones, balance in every step. Vitamin B12, the spark that gave strength back to my muscles and clarity to my mind. Vitamin E, the one that loosened my rigid body and let me stretch again without fear. Magnesium, the quiet support that improved my sleep and my mornings. These were my allies, my team, my second chance. You don't need to do it all at once. You can start with 1. You can talk to your doctor, do your research, listen to your body. You can change one small part of your day and let that part change everything else over time. I started with a blood test. You can start with a decision. And before I close this video, I'd love to hear from you. Because this channel isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a place to share what works, what hurts, what we hope for, and what we learn with the years. Tell me in the comments, have you felt weakness or pain when climbing stairs? Which of these vitamins do you already use or know? And above all, how old are you and where are you watching from? I'd love to read you, because every experience you share can help someone else. Thank you for being with me. And remember, age doesn't take away your power to decide. Sometimes all it takes is a bit of information and a good dose of courage.